What is up, night crawlers? Welcome back to the Nightmare's Edge. Thank you all so much for being here. Tonight, I bring you a story by the amazingly talented Dr. Plague. I am certain you have read and heard some of his stories, so those who know his work know you're in for a real treat. The story is Shower 5. Be sure to check the description for links to the story, as well as Dr. Plague's socials and YouTube channel. Now, without any further ado, sit back, relax, and let me tickle those inner fears. I work as a correctional officer at Stragview Prison. Now, saying that probably brings up all sorts of images and ideas, but just know the job is very different than what you see on TV. There are no nightly escape attempts, no big throwdowns on the yard every afternoon, and if your inmates are drunk, it's because they've been smuggling things out of the kitchen for weeks. The night shift is not generally very exciting, but it does have its quirks. For example, all the guards in the confinement knew about the mysterious shower in Quad 2. At first, it was just a curiosity to help pass the time, a mystery to be solved, or some bit of annoyance that inmates could complain about ceaselessly. No one could have known how bad it would get in the end. I've been an officer in the confinement unit of this prison pretty much since I got certified. There's a real need for male officers in an all-male facility. Shocking, I know, and the confinement unit is no different. Typically, the crew is small, each filling a desired need. My temperament was thought to be beneficial in a unit generally occupied by hardasses, and so I was assigned to the unit to fill a role. In the 2 years I've been here, I've seen and heard some things that you don't see on TV. I've heard hits planned out through the back grating in the windows. I've had all manner of things thrown at me through the flaps which we push their food and clothes in through. I've been called some pretty colorful names. I've stumbled across my fair share of bodies, hanging and bleeding, which needed immediate medical attention. Shower 5, though, was definitely the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I couldn't begin to tell you why. I doubt anyone could, but sometimes when you put an inmate in Shower 5, they would reappear in Shower 3. For those unfamiliar of how a prison quad is set up, let me explain. Each quad holds 28 cells, 14 on the bottom floor and 14 on the top floor, accessible by a catwalk. There are 5 showers in each quad. Showers 1 and 5 are on either side of cells 1 and 14. Showers 2 and 4 on either side of cells 15 and 28, and shower 3 sits between cells 21 and 22. We shower 2 quads a night, which roughly takes about 3 to 4 hours and makes up the biggest part of our night. Quad 2 shower nights were Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Inmates are cuffed, removed from cells, weighed, given haircuts, and are placed in the shower so we can search their cells. They're given roughly 15 minutes to wash and dry off before we come back to cuff them and return them to their cells. While they're showering, they're locked in a shower cell about the size of, well, a household shower, while we go to the next quad over to do pretty much the same thing. Sometime within that 15-minute window, the inmate will close their eyes to blink or maybe rinse their hair and suddenly appear in Shower 3. At first, it would happen anywhere from 2 to 4 times a month. It was never anything you could count on, and we'd sometimes take bets on when it would happen. It never happened in reverse either. Shower 3 was broken, so we never used it, but when we put an inmate in Shower 3 for holding, he never went anywhere until we were ready to go somewhere. The shower was a mystery that provided a much-needed break from the tedious job. For the first 4 months, we laughed at the looks on the confused inmate faces who appeared in Shower 3, with a head full of shampoo or frantically searching for a towel that wasn't there. It was all fun and games until Inmate Ferris disappeared. Inmate Ferris was one of the few who didn't request Shower 5 every shower night. The others fought like cats to get that stall, and I'd come in the quad many nights to the sound of them bickering about who would get it tonight or trying to trade their breakfast trays for someone's spot in line. One inmate, in particular, Garvey, used to sell his breakfast tray for the place in line that would get him to Shower 5 every night. He showered there 9 shower nights out of 10, and still never had it happen to him. One night in particular, we had just packed him away and put the next man in the shower 5, only to return and find shower 3 occupied, shower 5 empty, and Garvey pouting like an angry child. They all tried, but in truth, less than half of them ever got to experience it. And none of them got to experience it like Ferris did. When it came time for Ferris to go, he said he wasn't going to shower 5. Usually this wouldn't have been a problem. There were tons of others willing to take his place, but tonight, Ferris was my last shower. Garvey immediately started hooting and wanting to take his place, but I ignored him. On that night, all I was thinking about was the food waiting for me in the fridge, and the prospect of being done with another night of showers. There was also the matter of Ferris's smell. Ferris had been refusing his showers for the last 7 shower nights. The other shift didn't quite enforce the rules as we did about bathing once a week, and the administration had begun to notice his odor. They sent down orders after their latest inspection that Ferris would shower tonight, on his own or with assistance. Look, Ferris, you're going into that shower. It's the only one I have available and you're my last shower. I ain't going in that shower, he said evenly as he stared at me through the glass on the door. I waved Purvis off as he started walking towards us, not wanting to spook Ferris and create a situation where there didn't need to be one. Look, Ferris, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. If you refuse the shower, I can get a bunch of angry men down here to pull you out and put you in the shower. Or you can be an adult and go take a shower so we can be done here. What's it going to be? He argued for a bit more, but in the end, he put on the cuffs and went to the shower 5 meekly enough. I will always regret making him go. He was praying when I closed the shower door. He was very religious, and a shower that made people vanish was something he neither trusted nor understood. I closed him in and took off his cuffs, and at first, I didn't think he would shower at all. As I descended the stairs, though, I heard the water start and decided to make a trip to the officer station to have a quick bite. The crisis had been averted, and now it was time for a well-deserved reward. 15 minutes later, I returned to find 3 occupied showers and 2 empty showers. Well, not exactly empty, I suppose. Ferris's towel was still hung on the door, and his soap dish was sitting on the ledge. Of inmate Ferris, though, there was no sign. Purvis looked around, not quite understanding what had happened, and wondered out loud if we'd filled all the showers before we left. I said we had, and Purvis and I spent the next hour searching every shower, every cell on the quad, and every cell and shower in the other 3 quads for good measure. We checked the CCTV in the station, but there was no video of him leaving the shower. The video showed him showering 1 minute, and then gone the next. The strange shower hadn't disappeared Ferris to a different shower this time. It had simply disappeared him. The next 3 days were a nightmare. Ferris's disappearance prompted an emergency search of all dorms, a compound-wide lockdown, the dispatching of the K-9 team, and a county-wide manhunt that extended into neighboring counties before it was finally called off after a fruitless 2 weeks. For 3 days we were questioned, had to make multiple written and verbal statements, and were grilled endlessly by local and federal officers. The cameras clearly showed that we had been absent from the quad when Ferris disappeared, so after 3 days, they had no choice but to let us return to work. We weren't sure what to make of the incident, but we chalked it all up to the strangeness with shower 5 and went on about work as usual. We didn't use shower 5 anymore though. It seemed like the strange magic finally turned sour. We even called in a favor and had maintenance come down and fix shower 3, which meant we still had 4 showers in quad 2. We didn't see Ferris for another 3 months. I've said we a lot in this story, but I haven't talked about the men I served with in confinement. Purvis was our muscle, 6 feet tall and built like a barrel. I'm pretty sure all the inmates thought he communicated through grunts and the occasional "go to hell." If you weren't an inmate though, he was one of the nicest guys you'd ever care to know. I've spent many afternoons on his back porch, with a beer in my hand and the smell of steaks on the grill as I chatted with the 3rd member of our trio, McMahon, while Purvis grilled. McMahon. Sergeant McMahon. was a 10-year vet who had spent most of his time doing paperwork and fielding questions from the brass. He let us handle most of the day-to-day drudgery, while he insulated us in a warm blanket of correctly managed reports and accurately maintained logs. McMahon was far from what you'd call imposing, standing about 5'2" with thick glasses and a slim frame, but he was knowledgeable about his job and always had something to talk about. He was the last sergeant I ever served with in that confinement unit. 3 months passed and Ferris's disappearance was starting to fade. After the inquiries and the inquest determined we had nothing to do with his disappearance, they put us back in confinement and told us to keep a closer watch in the future. We talked about it sometimes, speculating what could have happened to him, but ultimately we lost interest after the paperwork ended and the hype died down. He was gone, and we still had a job to do. The showers went on and the days turned into weeks. It was a Sunday when he came back. Sundays were a pretty easy day in confinement. We didn't do showers on Sunday night. The night was spent cleaning and passing out toiletries and generally just finding something online to watch as we ran out the clock. We brought food in to share most Sundays, and this was no exception. I brought chicken, Purvis brought soda, and McMahon brought a pecan pie that his sister had made. By 9 o'clock, we'd caught up on our paperwork, passed out all the toiletries, and were full as ticks and ready to find a movie. I had my feet kicked up on the desk and was just getting ready to enjoy a nap when the sounds of boots on doors started in Quad 2. McMahon looked up at the screen and sighed. I knew it was too good to be true. We headed out on the quad to see what all the kicking was about. As Purvis and I came through the door, we were buffeted by screams of Shower 3 and "It's Ferris and he's dying." We came up the stairs 2 at a time, and what I saw will haunt me until the day I die. I'd seen men get hurt in the line of work, I'd seen men get stabbed, and I'd watched a few men die, but I'd never seen anything to top this level of cruelty. It was Ferris, all right. We arrived in time to see his last few breaths and listen to him wheeze as his lungs finished filling with blood. He lay on the dirty shower floor, his blood pooling as it tried to flow into the drain, and shuddered out the last seconds of his life. He was naked, and we were saved having to look at his mutilated genitalia because of the fetal position he had taken. A nurse would later tell us his genitals had been cut and sliced cruelly before he died, and his stomach and intestines were a mess of punctured tissue. We didn't know about this until later, but what we could see was horrific enough. His skin had been sliced by long claws, and his back looked as though something had tried to peel him a strip at a time. His arms, legs, neck, and face, and especially his back, were in bloody tatters. And when he finally died, I considered it a mercy. "Go get the Sarge," Purvis said, and as the man with the shortest time in, I was relegated to the bubble while McMahon went to the floor to assess the situation. They took Ferris out under a sheet, and it was dripping red in its wake. This started a whole new bombardment of paperwork. CCTV footage was combed over a frame at a time. Witness statements were taken, and dispositions were written. Luckily, we had done our rounds on time. One of us was on camera not even 30 minutes before he disappeared in the shower. It was agreed that the incident had been no negligence of ours. The narrative they constructed was unsatisfying as it was unbelievable, but it kept our bacon out of the fire, so we didn't argue. Ferris had managed to worm his way into the grates through the shower and made it into the ventilation system. The other inmates had likely been feeding him and telling him when to stop moving. This was before audio was normal in the dorms, so we couldn't check to see if they were talking to him. After 3 months, he had gotten bored and wandered into one of the big fans and gotten cut up. He drug himself back into the shower, Shower 3 this time, and called for help. That's where we found him. No inmate admitted to having talked to Ferris since he disappeared, and no blood was ever found in the vents. But this was a much better narrative than a shower that kept sending inmates from one shower to another. Sometimes the administration just wanted paperwork to look good, making sense was secondary. After that, no inmate would go near Shower 5. It spread the compound seemingly overnight, and any inmate that would come into Quad 2 would refuse to go into that shower. We were more than happy to oblige the request. One more weird occurrence and they'd pull us all out and separate us between the other dorms. We all liked being where we were and were in no hurry to get sent somewhere else. For the next month, we kept a low profile and tried our best to keep the disturbances to a minimum. If we needed a reminder of the incident, all we had to do was look at the red stains on the floor of shower 3, the ones that no amount of scrubbing could get rid of. We managed to keep the weirdness to a minimum for about a month before it came completely off the rails. Purvis and I were conducting showers in quad 3 and 4 when they brought in our latest wild child. Everett was what we'd call a frequent flyer. Had we known he was coming in, we'd put him in the cell that they had just released him from 3 days ago. He had gotten into another fight, probably over gang politics, and now was sitting in the sally port again cussing up a storm. When they asked us where we wanted him, we didn't even think about shower 5. We told them just to put him in a shower on the other side and we'd deal with him later. I don't know if he said something to them or not, but they later told us that they loaded him into shower 5, leaving the cuffs on because he was being combative. We finished showers late that night, and just about the time my butt hit the chair, I remembered Everett. I haven't heard a peep out of him. Did they load him into a cell? McMahon looked at his board and shook his head. Pretty sure they put him in a shower. A quick look through the glass told us he wasn't in one of the ground floor showers. How could he be? We had used all the bottom showers to shower other quads. When I asked them why they had put him in the shower 5, they answered that it had been funny to watch him piss his pants in fear of the mystery shower. It was less funny after the events of that night. We were preparing to go get him when a chorus of screams brought our attention to the quad. The inmates were screaming, terrified wails that only the doomed are capable of, and the whole quad was going nuts. We could all see the door to shower 5 heaving and buckling as something slammed into it with a machine-like rhythm. That wasn't like any kicking I had ever heard, and added to the screaming, it put me on edge. Shower 5 had become something sinister, something not altogether understandable, and I did not want to see what new horror it had in store for us. I started to move, despite my apprehension, but McMahon stopped me. "I've got this. Call the captain and get some help down here while we go see what's going on." His actions saved me that day. Sometimes, I wish it hadn't. He and Purvis left the station in a hurry, piling up at the doors as they hunted for keys. They came through the door, one behind the other as they mounted the steps in a flurry of motion. They were at the top of the stairs and heading towards the shower when the door buckled outward. The door was reinforced metal, and whatever was on the other side had separated it from one of its hinges. The hinge hung lamely, concrete still clinging to it, as something dark and groping tried to climb through the hole. The snapping mouth glistened in the overhead lights as the creature scrabbled and pushed to be free of its prison. I saw Purvis take a step back, bumping into McMahon as the two tried to process what was happening. All thoughts of calling for help had fled from me as I watched the events unfold. The creature freed itself from the hole, black goo glistening on the torn door, and made its way up the wall with a hellish shriek and a metallic clittering. I could hear through the glass. The whole quad had started screaming, and their hellish chorus was only drowned out by the creature's screams of pain as it left a glistening trail behind it on the concrete wall. The two officers, my friends, stood like statues as the thing swung its eyeless head from side to side. It seemed to be confused by all the screaming, the sound bouncing off the concrete, and I thought they might escape as Purvis took another tentative step backward. That's when McMahon started screaming. I'd seen McMahon face down the most hardened of inmates, seen him hold the line during last summer's riots as we held the gate against dozens of screaming inmates, but this creature was too much for him. He screamed, and it cut across the hellish sound of the quad like a knife through butter. The creature turned its eyeless face towards him, and the front of its bulbous mouth split open to reveal lines of serrated teeth. It loosed a high-pitched sound like a piece of farm equipment stripping its gears and leapt, coming stickily off the wall. Its path took it straight into Purvis, who was frozen in front of the screaming sergeant. It rode him to the ground, knocking McMahon off his feet, and the strange mouth ripped itself open to reveal rows of black, glistening teeth. Its mouth dove, and it tore chunks of flesh out of the screaming man as McMahon scooted backward in a state of sheer terror. He reached for his gas, the small can of chemical spray that is usually our best defense against aggressive inmates. But his hand seemed unsure of how to break the seal that held it in its holster, or even whether or not he wanted to. The creature, meanwhile, was wolfing down gobbets of a quickly exsanguinating Purvis. Purvis was not a small man. I had seen him lay hands on men who would have given me trouble and put them on their faces as easily as someone subduing a child. Purvis was straining against the thing as it tore blood strips out of his shirt, his undershirt, and his chest, but his biceps were losing purchase, and he was starting to weaken. The creature raised its muzzle and all at once bit down on his face, engulfing the man's head in a single bite. As Purvis kicked and thrashed under it, I saw McMahon get to his feet and run for it. The catwalk had 2 points of egress, and McMahon seemed to think that if he can get to the other side, he could elude the creature and put a solid steel door between them. He almost did, too, until the creature looked up from the stripped skull it was chewing on and heard him running down the stairs. It leapt, frog-like, and hit one of the overhead cage lights as it swung drunkenly before falling to the concrete with a shower of glass and twisted bars. As it fell, the creature leapt off it and caught McMahon in the back as he ran for the door. The door is framed in 2 large glass windows that stand about 25 feet high, so you can glance out at the quad and see what's happening at any given time. The creature slammed into McMahon and plastered him against one of the windows like a bug. His nose broke, his glasses shattered, and as he slid down, I could follow his progress with the trail of blood he left. The only thing visible was one hand, spasmodically grasping at the impenetrable barrier between him and freedom as the creature devoured him. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there with the phone in one hand, dial tone blaring at me, and the radio in the other hand, putting out the same good-natured chatter it usually does at this time of night. It was weird to think that there were people having normal nights somewhere else on the compound. While my 2 best friends were being devoured before my eyes, there were actually people out there having comfortable nights filled with nothing more pressing than a bellyache or an unruly inmate who wouldn't go to bed. It didn't even seem possible that our universes could be on the same plane of existence. I think that's when my mind snapped. Or maybe it was when I looked up from the radio and saw the creature looking at me, its eyeless face staring straight at me, that my mind simply unraveled. I let the phone slip out of my hand, let the radio clatter to my desk, and simply curled into a ball on the floor. I don't know how long I was there, but when I came back to myself, the captain was shaking me, and all hell had truly broken loose. They had come in after I didn't answer the radio. They had used the emergency keys to come into the station and found me on the ground in a catatonic state. They had then looked out and seen the blood spattered on the window and feared that a riot was underway. They had assembled their response team, a 7-man team with riot gear, and proceeded into the quad. As I looked out into the shadowy hellscape, I could see that several of the cells had been opened somehow, and there was a lot more blood on the floor than I remember. The remains of body armor and broken shotguns lay everywhere, and the lights in the quad seemed to be in a constant state of flicker. The team had gone in and attacked by what they thought was a mountain lion. They had been ripped to shreds in a matter of minutes. Only the team leader had managed to escape after throwing a flash grenade in the thing's face. It had battered the door a little while trying to get at him, but had eventually gone back to eating the remains of the other 6 members. The team leader said it looked like some of the inmates had also been killed, though he couldn't figure out how it was getting into the cells. They looked to me for answers, but I had none. The team leader joined me in a fetal ball in the corner while the captain made calls for backup. I sat in the station for the next 2 days, nodding off when sleep finally took me, and watching as the state police and animal control tried to figure out how to get this thing out of the quad. After the 3rd police officer was ripped to shreds, we got a visit from someone higher up. The warden came into the station, looking nonplussed and as calm as ever. He had a sit-down with the captain and the chief of state police, who had made my station his command center. He told us the quad was being quarantined until further notice, the reflection on his glasses making him look as inhuman as the creature. No one was going in or out until this thing was dead. The captain asked him what we should do about the men trapped inside, men who hadn't eaten in 2 days, and he simply shrugged and said if they were in there, they were as good as dead already. That thing isn't going to let anyone out once they're in, and a rescue attempt isn't going to do anything but lose you more men. Don't worry though, we'll make it so no one who's gone through that door ever existed. The warden led the chief out after that, and all the state police went with him. It was just us in our own little world again. He was true to his word too. McMahon and Purvis were unmarried bachelors, and so they disappeared one day after work. Of the 27 inmates that had been in that quad, I don't know. Their files were gone when I came back. Their DC numbers and their CDC records were expunged, and all the cells were open and empty. The doors to Quad 2 were sealed shut, the door welded closed and caution tape draped over it. I was offered McMahon's position as confinement sergeant, and I took it. I took it not because I wanted it, but because I felt it was my sacred trust to guard against that thing every night. I've never seen it during the day. It doesn't seem to like the light, but at night, you can catch glimpses of it in the darkness as it stalks the rats and roaches that still live in the quad. The new officers they put back there always ask me what happened to Quad 2, but I never tell them the whole story. If they knew, they might get its attention and add more blood to my hands. I've seen officers come and go in my 10 years since that day, but I haven't told one about the incident. My captain is a major now at another facility. Everyone from my old shift has either quit or moved on. I alone keep my vigil here every night. Sometimes I see him in the semi-darkness looking at me and thinking. After 10 years, I imagine he's hungry for something more than rats. Maybe in another 10 years, he'll question how thick that glass is between him and real meat. When he does, I'll be here. I loved the story, and I'm certain that you enjoyed it as well. So again, please check the description for all the links needed to check out Dr. Plague's work. But until next time, remember, just because you couldn't see it, doesn't mean it wasn't watching you.